Hi biology students, this is Mrs. Miller, and today we're going to be continuing on with molecules of life. Today we're going to be working on section 2, which is going to cover lipids, nucleic acids, and proteins. In our last unit, we learned about carbohydrates, and now it's time to learn about the other 3 molecules of life. Today we're going to start by talking about lipids. Lipids contain a large and varied group of different things that we're going to talk about today. So the first thing I want you guys to know about lipids is that they are not water soluble. So what does soluble mean? Well, this tells us that lipids don't dissolve in water. When we get to some of the examples of what lipids are, that's going to make some sense to you, but know that lipids don't dissolve in water. So no matter how much you sit there and stir, it's not going to dissolve. When we look at the structure for lipids, what you're going to notice is that we are going to have them be made out of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and they can have phosphate groups on them as well. But the reason why I highlighted the carbon and the hydrogen is so that you remember that because it has carbon and it has hydrogen, that lipids are also organic. So some good examples of lipids are things like fats, oils, and waxes. If I took olive oil and I mixed it with water and I stirred and stirred and stirred, if you gave it a little while, that oil would not dissolve in that water. Instead, it would create a layer on top of the water. But we need these lipids within our bodies, and the purpose of lipids is for long-term energy storage. They also help to create the membranes within all of our cells, which will be our next unit. And they help with waterproof coverings, which is especially helpful in plants. Steroids are also types of lipids. So when people think steroids, they most of the time think people using steroids to get really big and bulky. But really what most steroids are going to do within our cells is they're going to act as chemical messengers. So over here I have an example of a lipid. You can see my phosphate group up here. And then I have carbon and hydrogen and oxygen, and then these long chains, which are the tails. Just like in the last section, we're going to notice that there's a lot of terminology that we have to learn, or lots of vocabulary that you have to learn. So with lipids, we're going to talk about the fact that some of them have parts that may be hydrophilic, and other parts that might be hydrophobic. So hydro, remember from our hydrolysis, means water. Philic means loving, and phobic means fearing. So if you think about someone who has a phobia, like arachnophobia, that means a person is afraid of spiders. So phobic means fearing. So when I put these words together, I get hydrophilic means water loving. So I see these little hearts all around the water means hydrophilic. So in this case, the phospholipid, which we see here, has a hydrophilic head. So the head of this would really like water. Hydrophobic means water fearing, so it's afraid of the water. So what we see with these little hydrophobic tails is they're going to avoid the water as much as they possibly can. As we talk about lipids, we're going to break them down into 2 general groups, which are the saturated lipids, or the saturated fats, or the unsaturated lipids. And you're going to notice that there's a pretty easy way of remembering these. So saturated lipids. Many are formed from fatty acids and have a head and a tail. So when I look at this example here, I have the head part, which I'm going to put in yellow, and then I have the tail part, which is in green. Okay, so it does have a head and the tail, and when I looked at that head and the tail, you're probably going to find that the head is going to be hydrophilic, water loving, and the tail is going to be hydrophobic, or doesn't like water. So when we look at saturated lipids, we know that they're saturated because they have all single bonds between the carbons. So here I can see the carbons in the tail, and each one just has a single line going to all other parts on that tail. So each carbon has 4 single bonds, or it should have 4 little lines all around it. Some good examples of saturated lipids include things like butter, like Crisco, and what you're going to notice is that most of the time, saturated lipids are going to be solid at room temperature. So remember I said there was an easy way to remember this? Saturated lipids have straight tails, notice how it's nice and straight, and they're solid at room temperature, and that's all because of their single bonds. Okay? Saturated, straight tails, single bonds, solid at room temperature. Keep all the S's together. Unsaturated lipids are the other kind. So fatty acids can be unsaturated. So again, what we're going to see is that head part. I'm going to put that in yellow. And then the tail part, but now notice there's a little bit of a curve to it. So what we get with unsaturated fats is there is a double bond, either one or more than one, in the tail. So here I can see my double bond. That double bond is going to cause the tail to bend instead. What we're going to see as examples would be things like olive oil, canola oil, the oil that we see in avocados. And so to put those things together, unsaturated lipids have a bent tail. They are liquid usually at room temperature, and they have a double bond. So put all the S's together, solid, single bond, straight tail, and put all of the other letters with the unsaturated. So we have our double bond, our bent tail, liquid at room temperature. The next molecule of life that we're going to talk about is nucleic acids. I do want to warn you right away that we are not going to take very much time at all to talk about nucleic acids because we really focus on them later when we talk about the genetics unit. So when we look at the nucleic acids, again, we are going to be noticing that they have hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus in them. So because I have my hydrogen and my carbon, I know right away that they are going to be organic. With nucleic acids, I can see that their monomers are going to be nucleotides and their polymers are nucleic acids. So that's pretty easy to keep track of. Nucleic acids, polymers, nucleic acids. A nucleotide, which is a monomer, is made up of 3 parts, and that's a sugar, a phosphate group, and a nitrogenous base. So I can see my sugar here, my phosphate group is the P, and then I have my nitrogenous base. So nucleotides can be joined together to form nucleic acid, like we see up here. Nucleic acids are really important because they store and have all of the genes that make us us. These genes get passed on to future generations. So you got half of your genes from your mom, you got half of your genes from your dad, and then what we did is we created you. So that is all because of the nucleic acids that carried those genes. There are 2 types of nucleic acids, and that's DNA and RNA. In humans, we're mainly going to be talking about DNA, although we will talk a little bit about RNA, but we're really going to hold off on that until next semester. The big thing I want you to take away about nucleic acids is that DNA and nucleic acids contain all the instructions needed to create proteins, which is our 4th and final molecule of life. All right, guys, let's get to our last molecule of life, which is proteins. So when we talk proteins, proteins are going to mainly be made up of 4 different elements, and that would be nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Because I have my carbon and my hydrogen again, proteins are organic. So proteins are the polymers of proteins, again, another really simple one, but the monomers of these are called amino acids. So what is a little amino acid? Well, it gets its name from something called the amino group on there, which is the NH2. So when I look at the structure NH2, that's what we call the amino group. That's how it gets its name because of the nitrogen on there. On the other end, we have something called the carboxyl group or the COOH group. So COOH. It would be a good idea for you guys to draw this amino acid into your notes and label the amino group, the carboxylic acid group, or the carboxyl group is what I usually call it. Notice that there's just a hydrogen on one end, and then we have something called the R, or variable side chain, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So go ahead, draw that in there, pause the video for a moment, and get that done. So on that last slide, I mentioned something about the side chain or the R group. So what is that? Well, there are 20 unique side chains, which means there are 20 unique amino acids. And each of these amino acids has their own properties. It's all these different amino acids that can go and help create every bit of our structure within our bodies. So we see all sorts of them on here. You guys are not going to have to know these right now. We're going to talk more about these proteins in second semester. You might be asking yourself right now, why are proteins important? Well, first off, remember that the instructions for all of our proteins is stored in DNA. So that's the big connection between proteins and nucleic acids. Nucleic acids have all the information to create these proteins. But each protein has its own specific role. They can control the rate of reactions. So we're going to talk about enzymes in the last section, and they're going to allow our reactions within our body to speed up. They're also going to regulate cell processes, so we're going to make sure that we have the right amount of, let's say, oxygen or carbon dioxide within our blood, or blood glucose levels, things like that. They also allow us to form bones and muscles, so the majority of our structure within our bodies, including our hair, nails, or animals' claws, also going to be proteins. They transport substances. So on your little red blood cells, there's going to be a protein called hemoglobin that brings the oxygen to your body and takes away the carbon dioxide. And they also help us to fight disease. So proteins are super, super important. And one thing that I forgot to put on here that I think you guys might want to add is that structure, should be a C in there, structure determines function. So it's the structure of each individual protein that determines what it's going to do within the body. So they're very specific, so their structures are also very specific. If you remember back to our last unit, we talked about how we went from monomers into polymers using dehydration synthesis, and how we went from polymers to monomers using hydrolysis reaction. And we talked mainly about carbohydrates. What I do want you guys to know is that we can do this with all 4 molecules of life. We can go through dehydration synthesis and hydrolysis reaction. With something like a protein, what we're going to do is we're going to take our amino acids, and again, we're going to bond them by 2 specific groups, which is the amino group and the carboxyl group. So I see my carboxyl group, remember that has the C in it, and the amino group, which has the N in it. And what I'm going to do, just like we saw with dehydration synthesis before, I'm going to take that OH off of one, take the H off of the other, we pull out the water, and then we end up with a bond where we stored energy. So again, that's an example of dehydration synthesis. This type of bond between proteins is a special type of bond called a peptide or peptide bond. So that's when we get our polypeptide. We take water out, and the one thing I really want you to remember is that all chemical reactions have to follow the law of conservation of matter. What's that? The law of conservation of matter states that matter cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred into a new substance. In other words, whatever you start with, you have to end with. We can't just pick up random molecules. So here I can see 2 black dots and I have 2 white dots. At the end, I still end up with 2 black dots and 2 white dots. So that one makes sense. What I see here is 2 black dots and 2 white dots, and all of a sudden I'm ending up with a bunch of gray. We didn't have those gray dots to start off with, so we cannot create a new substance. So that's why this one is accurate, but the bottom one is not. So if you don't start with carbon as a reactant, you can't randomly have carbon in the products. Hope that makes sense. If not, please let us know if you guys have any questions. Otherwise, have a wonderful day, guys.